friends, in this video I am going to review a book on data security authored by Vinod. The title of the book is Data Sovereignty, and the title, as you can see the title of the book is Data Sovereignty, and it has a very beautiful tagline, the Pursuit of Supremacy. Is the supreme power for which interprets sovereignty. The book clearly talks about data sovereignty. I think if you have some idea about the data security and privacy and all, then I think you will have a lump sum idea of this book, how this book will be. Although I am going to give you a review inside of this book, how this book can be useful for you. For the sake of review of this book, I have taken out some of the important points in the form of a PowerPoint presentation that can be useful for you for understanding this book. Now let's go into the chapters. First, or not go into the chapters, let's see how this book wants to deliver for what it is written. At the very beginning of this book, you will find the writer himself begin with one question, like why this book is written, and the first gives the concept of storage of data through cloud. Now if we take the example of our mobile phones and Google Drives, we are storing our data in Google Drive, and most of the applications installed in our mobile phones, they store data in cloud. Suppose you have uninstalled one application in your phone, then again after a couple of months or in a different device, you have purchased a new phone in that, and and you have reinstalled the application, and using your user ID and password, when you log in, you have your data, whatever the data you stored while you were using, and even after 2 months your data are available. This is why, because your data are stored somewhere in the server. Because of that, your data are available. You have access to that data again. And the next concept comes concept of cross-border storage. And what is the concept of cross-border storage? Like, see, when you store your data in a Google Drive, you are not aware whether you don't know whether your data are stored in within India or in a server which is out of our geographical boundaries. So here comes the concept of cross-border storage, and again concept comes data center. Data center, if we talk about data center, let's first understand what is a data center. Data center is simply a network storage. Suppose you are storing data in your mobile phone using a pen drive. Now you are using data. Now you are storing data using internet to a different computer in a different country. A server is like a computer. These are all terminologies. Server which serves. Server and a computer, these are all terminologies. Server is also a computer which has the same facilities, but it has some high specification. Specification is high. In your personal computer, you may have 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte of hard drive, but in a server, since it has to provide service, it has a number of hard drives. And in your personal computer also, there is a processor. That processor need not be that much of high end, since you are the only one who is using this, so you don't need that much of processing power. And when you are storing, since a server, in case of a server, it has to provide service to a number of clients. The server computer need to be equipped with some good specification of processors like Intel Xeon processor and many more, with a graphics card, etc. So a typical, now let's understand what a typical data center should have. A typical data center, if you see it, let's consider it has a multiple racks, and each rack holding number of servers, and it has to be humidity controlled, and at the same time temperature has to be controlled. And servers, and all these servers are interconnected. This has to be interconnected. Since why this has to be interconnected? It should have an interface to the outside world. Data has to be available if from a distant remote computer. So this is the basic concept of a typical data center. Now let's go to the next point. Now threat. When you are storing your data outside your geographical boundaries, it itself a threat. Storing your data beyond your geographical boundaries is itself a threat. Then comes the data privacy, concept of data privacy and data protection. And this is the need of the hour at this moment. Because of why? Because in India, as of now, we don't have that much of strict legislation. And what is the best way to store data? The best way to store data within its geographical boundaries. That's why this book is meant to be written by the writer. That's why the writer himself raised the question why this book is written. And at the very beginning of this book, writer emphasizing this thing. The threat is data colonization. Once India was under domination of British, so data colonization is like that only. Whoever controls the data control everything. And it can enslavement of mind. If you have the data, you can enslave a particular country. Enslavement of mind, body and soul. Now let's understand these three words. Mind. You can control using data, you can control mind also. Let's take the example of blue whale game. And if you see in case of blue whale, it was a targeted attack. Only few people got that request. And body. Body is also, since our health data, we are storing our health data in our smart watches, and our smartwatch is connected with some application in our mobile phone, and that application installed in our mobile phone is storing in data somewhere in a distant server. So if you have some access, somehow you gain access to that data of health data, you can control. You can manipulate the data also. Now medical health record also. So our health data is very much crucial. Then another point, loss of identity. Loss of identity is a very important thing now. If you have heard about impersonation, impersonation can be related to identity. Suppose somebody have gained access to your bank account, so he can impersonate you. He can impersonate on behalf of you, and he can make some transactions because he can pretend to be you, because since he has all the data, all the sensitive data like password, usernames and all of this. Because of this, he can steal your identity. Then loss of privacy. Loss of privacy will also be there. We never care about storing our data, so we should be very much careful where we are storing our data. So data can be misused also. So privacy comes. Whenever you have data, privacy automatically comes. An increase in cyber crimes. So cyber crimes, now it's proliferating day by day. And there's a very good quote I have taken out from this book. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. We should always be vigilant, whether every time you have to be alert, whether somebody have gained access to your data. Now without wasting time, let's go to the next slide. At the time of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, our former PM, at that time, development of information technology was among its top 5 priorities. And since now, as of now also, it's continuously developing. Data are still proliferating from all sides, from all the sectors. Now, as we have discussed, data center is not important for private sector also, not important for only private sector, it's important for government also. Now if you see most of the government scheme like Handrega, it's a very big software. All are government, most of the government sites are stored somewhere, their data are stored somewhere in a data center. Now there is a progressive dependency. Now a government is also dependent in IT enabled services to enhance their governance to delivery of service to its citizens. And for the sake of delivery of service to its citizens, government is now bound to the IT enabled services, and they hire IT professionals also. And most importantly, there are the 4 V's of any data center. The 4 V's and the 4 pillars. The 4 V's or 4 pillars are like volume, velocity, variety, and veracity. When you talk about data center, these 4 V's has to be taken care of. First, velocity. First volume. Volume is nothing but the scale of data, and the volume is day by day proliferating. Somewhere I have found in this book, when you go deep insight into the book, you will find how data are proliferating day by day. So volume is nothing but scalability, scale of data. Then velocity comes. Now you are accessing this video on YouTube, so YouTube server has some ability to provide continuous streaming to you. Suppose this video is seen by 50% at the same time, YouTube server has to be that much equipped. It should have that much of bandwidth to provide continuous flow of streaming to you. So velocity in terms of bandwidth and streaming. That's for example streaming. So these are all literary terms. These are all literature. So concept behind this is like, at the same time, it's not in the case of video only. You can say suppose 1000 person accessing one server. Suppose 1000 applicants are applying for a particular job and in a particular server. So let's go into the another variety. Data can be of variety. Data cannot be always the same. The data can be structured or unstructured. If you take the example of structured data, like relational databases are a very good example of structured data. Now relational databases, and if you see unstructured data like videos, then messages, photos, and any kind of data that can be, you can consider unstructured data. And if you go into the one database called Hadoop, now it's popular, so you can read about that also. Even I don't have that much of idea about how Hadoop works also. So this is a very important thing now. It has to be learned, because our future is in this thing only. And veracity of data. If you talk about veracity, simply you can consider is authenticity. And now confidentiality. Now let's understand, see 3 things. Confidentiality. If you are storing your data, you should have only access to that data. If anybody has access to that data, that should be encrypted, and somehow he get access to that data also, that data should not be decrypted. Then integrity. Every time you are accessing the data, that data has to be the same. And then availability. Whenever you want to access your data, it should be available to you. And next, this book talks about regulatory frameworks. Talks about regulatory frameworks, and it compares the regulatory frameworks with the rest of the world. If you compare with GDPR, General Data Protection Rule of European Union, and now this is finalized in 2018. But as of now, India has not comes up with that much of stringent stringent acts. Now it is in the form of bill, and probably very soon it will be in the form of an act. and it talks about policymakers. Further, this book encourages policymakers to come up with some long-term strategic and industry-friendly framework. And this book talks about enabling India to be a data center hub. This book not only talk about the topics, it talks about simply talks about the topic. It encourages India to be a very good business hub in the field of data. And this book comprises of 9 chapters and 19 articles. First you need to go through the 9 chapters. Then when you have a clear idea of these topics, then you can go into the articles. Before jumping into the articles, you read the 9 chapters one by one. Then only it will be easier for you to understand the articles written article on various topics. So this was my small review of this book. I hope it will also encourage you to read this book. I may not be understandable to you. I hope when you read this book, whatever I am talking about the summary of this book. So it's not that possible for me that within 5 or 10 minutes I can say about this book. So I hope it will encourage you to read this book, and you will have a lot more knowledge, and it is the need of the hour also to go into these topics. Now I would like to conclude this review of this book by quoting one very beautiful sentence from this book. Whoever controls oil control everything. Now you can say whoever controls data controls everything. So this is my small review of this book. I hope you will enjoy reading this book too. For now, thanks a lot. Thanks for watching.